ministry. We're happy that you're here with us this morning. Today, for us, for Dave and I and Tammy, we were just gone out in the wilderness, completely off the grid for almost a week. And we saw moose, we saw ducks, we saw not very many people, and we had a great time. I recommend that you go up there, it's hard work, but I do recommend silence and solitude. But that's not why we're here today. We're here today to kick this worship off. We did see some moose with some really big antlers, and I'm glad they didn't charge us. That's a good thing. Is what gives us the victory, but also we're here to celebrate the fact that we can come to Him no matter what, no matter when, no matter where, no matter whether we think we deserve it or not. So we can come to Him just as we are. come broken, we do come desperate, but we know that you welcome us, you mend us, you rescue us. And that is the best news that we could ever hear. And we just are thankful for that. And we are praising you for that this morning. And as we are in your presence today, we know that you are mighty, you are all-powerful, you are the creator of the universe, and yet at the same time, you want to be with us. And that is the most amazing thing ever. I ask that for those of us who are struggling this morning in whatever way, that you would give the comfort and the guidance and the direction that we need. For those of us that are celebrating because we have family in town, because health concerns have been taken care of, we know that you are working miracles in our midst as far as health is concerned. We're just so asking you that you would continue to be in those situations and celebrate with us as we bring our praises to you. And as we listen to your word this morning that Josie is going to be bringing, we just ask that you would help us to keep our hearts open and our minds open so that we can hear the words that you would have us hear today. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Do you have something that reminds you of one of those defining moments in your life? You know what I mean, like maybe a necklace or a ring or even a stone that reminds you of someone or something important. For me, it's this piece of rope. It's the reminder of a time a decision I made became real. See, I can make decisions, what I'm going to do or say, but until I follow through and act on it, that decision stays right here. We make a lot of little decisions throughout our day, and most of them aren't that important, like, what am I going to eat for breakfast? Or what am I going to wear today? Or will I go to the supermarket today or tomorrow? But then there are those bigger decisions, like, am I going to get married or not? Do I move to the city or not? Or do I believe in God or not? I had chosen a profession where marriage wasn't really an option, and I had decided to stay in Jericho where my family and occupation were established. Then things began to change. I had heard about the Israelites and their God who had done amazing things for them, like part the Red Sea and hold back the Jordan River so they could cross. They had already defeated several armies, and they were headed our way. I had heard enough stories of their God that I believed he was real. That is, I believed it here. Then came that defining moment. The Israelites sent a couple men to check out our city, and somehow they heard that gentlemen could stay at my place. They showed up later that night. It didn't take me long to figure out who they were, but it also didn't take the king of Jericho long to find out that there were spies at Rahab's place. He sent a couple soldiers to get them. I saw them coming, and I knew I had to make a decision. Was God real? Well, I took the spies up on the roof and hid them, and when the soldiers came, I lied and told them there had been 2 men here, but they had already gone. When the soldiers left, I pleaded with the spies to swear that they would return my kindness and protect me and my family when they attacked our city. They agreed and gave me this piece of rope. They told me to tie it in my window, and if I did, my family and I would be spared. And I have life today because my decision became real.
So that was the spoiler alert on today's message about Rahab and her choices. Before we get into that, a couple of quick announcements. First of all, the blood drive is the 29th, and there are still spots to sign up, so if you would like to donate blood, You can see Jean, where'd you go? You normally sit over there. So, where do I need to move?
We're having issues, just
Yeah.
generally with your mic, so.
Yes, okay. So see Jean for blood drive sign up. Also, coming up on August 15th, we are having a family reunion. Midland campus and Beaverton campus are meeting together in Sanford to have service and to have a picnic and to play games and to just hang out and talk to people and meet people and that you may not have ever met before or see people you haven't seen in a long time. And it is a family reunion. We are all part of the same family. This is an important thing to get to. So if you need a ride, you let me know, let Jean know, let somebody know, and we'll get you there. Because just as you know, through our time with COVID and being shut down, and we have been disconnected from each other. And this is an opportunity that we have to reconnect, so.
Oh my.
Okay, I don't know what you guys did, but don't do that again, okay?
I was trying to figure it out, sorry. If you weren't awake before.
All right, so before Josie comes up to bring the message this morning, our summer series is about choices, looking at biblical characters and the choices that they have made. And over the past several weeks, you've seen interviews with different people and the choices that they've made about following God. And we're going to have an interview here this morning, and it's really kind of funny because I am interviewing my husband about choices. So if you haven't met Dave before, Dave, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to see if maybe this helps. See, it just takes somebody.
So, your mic, for whatever reason, is not coming out of the system at all.
Okay, well then. I have 5. Okay, how about that?
It's on. I don't know what's going on back here. I can't really tell you.
Okay, we are having issues. Matt, are you picking up enough sound? Okay. So come on over here.
Speak loudly.
It's like
More
you're
terrifying
scared
than
of me or something. Okay, Matt says we have to talk loud.
I'll do my best.
Okay. So, 2 questions for Dave, and the first one being, tell us about the choice that you had to make to follow Jesus or not when we were talking about my changing role and taking on this role, and the choice to be all in with moving up here and doing this.
Well, I thought about it a lot when I was on the island, and then afterward, I've been really struggling with the right words to say. Choices. The first choice was to leave the home campus that I had been worshiping in for a long time, and to move to a new campus, to get to know new people. That's not really the strong point of me. I'm more of I like to be in the back scenes, But that was one. The other choices, that we made was less money to be had. I mean, we're not making as much money. It can be a little nerve-wracking, but when we thought about it, we felt it was where God was sending us, so we made the choice to go. The next choice was to stay at our home in Sanford and just drive back and forth, or to come up and be here. And I will admit that I probably was a driving force to come here, because I felt to be in the community was better than just always having an opportunity to disappear to Sanford. The way I would do things. I love my house and I can retreat really easily, so that kept me from doing that. And there are lots of other things like our time together because of my travel. Now I'm from 15 minutes to 30 minutes to work and back every day. The changes there, but the Lord has been good.
And that leads into the second question. What consequences, we normally see that as a negative term, but consequences in terms of blessings and struggles came about because of your/our decision.
The first, well, I know it's not a big struggle, but the first struggle that comes to mind is my dog getting all anxious about the move. He was very comfortable in Sanford. He was very comfortable in the house and in the backyard. He's been a little anxious ever since we've moved. He's getting better, but he's still really anxious. Obviously, we talked about the financial thing, but the blessing has been that we've not struggled. God's provided our needs, whatever we needed. We've actually been blessed to do more than we needed. We got to go to Iowa Royal and backpack and do that, so that was good. It's hard, there's so many little blessings. I mean, my job changed. I now get out at 4 o'clock every day. It used to be I'd get out anytime from 4 to 6:30. So I'm getting out at 4 o'clock every day, every week. I'm home, at 4:30, 5 o'clock, which is nice, for family time, because with Deb's job and, working at 2 places, our time together, finding that time to fit in. So, that's been a challenge, but also a plus. We found ways to make that happen.
So, this was not on the list of questions, so I'm hitting him with this one. So, overall, worth it or not worth it?
Oh, absolutely worth it. And God's been good. I mean, He's pushed me in places that I didn't really want to be pushed, but it's been great. Asked me 2 years ago to come up here and talk. I always said no. I'm just going to stay back there. I don't want to. Those are things that, it's been a great thing.
And just for the record, most of you who, unless you've been at the Midland campus right along, most of you, your first time seeing Dave he's the first person you meet when you walk in the door. 2 years ago, that would not have happened, right? So, choices. To follow, to not follow, to go where God asks you to go, even if it's not comfortable, even if it's not what you would normally do. There you go. So Josie, you're up, and I'll see if we can't figure out the microphone.
Okay.
We'll check together.
And her mic should already be on. I
Yeah.
told her to leave it on. So,
Am I good? Do Okay, well, I am Josie. I've been introduced, but that's me. I'm here with part of my family, my husband Stefano and my youngest son Billy. We're happy to be here. How I said, for many of you, this is not our first time here.
that's how I made it do that.
We've been here a long time ago, and we're here again. Well, we just are thankful for that. I'm part of the preaching team of Eagle Ridge, but most of all, I am a very, very, very flawed disciple of Jesus Christ with all of you. So I'm in this thing of trying to, follow Jesus, be changed by Jesus, and be part of His mission. And I struggle with it, and I'm just happy that I'm in this with you all, and that we try to do this together, and that we try to look at the Bible and see if we can find something there that can help us and equip us in this walk. So we're doing this series, how Deb said, where what we're doing is we're looking at other people's choices, and we're trying to see if they can inspire us or help us. And I was thinking, social media, we can see a lot of things about them, but don't we go to social media a lot of times to do this? Kind of like we want to figure out if somebody is going through something similar to what we're going through, and maybe we're curious to see, how did they handle that, Maybe I want to lose weight. How did that person do that? Or maybe I'm parenting and I'm struggling with something. How did that parent, handle that? Or maybe I want to go on vacation and I'm like, oh, what did that person experience that they liked, right? So we go there and we kind of like to maybe see if someone else's experience we can relate to that, and maybe it can give us some good insights. That's kind of what we're doing in this series. But maybe it could be a little bit easier to relate to someone who's living in our era, in our same, country at least. And, but trying to relate to someone in the Bible, I mean, we're talking about someone that lived thousands of years ago, in a complete different setting and culture. And I think sometimes that is a challenge. But I do believe in Italy we have this saying. I don't know if you have something similar in here in America. It says, it's kind of like every place in the world is like my hometown, is a hometown. Kind of like to say wherever you would go in the world, you'll find the same dynamics, the same, issues that you find in your own hometown. And, so that's kind of the principle, I think, behind what we do. We believe that even people that lived long ago in different settings, they still have maybe some situations that are similar to ours in some way that we can relate to. And that's when their choice becomes relevant to us. So, the question is it possible for us today here, or for those in Midland, or for those that are listening wherever and streaming, is it possible for us today to relate to a prostitute that lived more than 3,000 years ago in an Eastern country? I believe this is a big challenge, and so that's why I invite you to meet Rahab, okay? So now we don't really know what she looked like. No Facebook pages or, a thing that we can go and see. Nothing like that. This is just how some artists or maybe in some movies she was imagined and portrayed, But we need to know her if we want to understand if whatever she chose to do has something to do with us today. And so the first thing I think we need to understand is the perspective in which her life and her story has arrived to us. Perspective is really important, guys, really. I mean, we come from Italy, and I can tell you that we look at some American things from our perspective, and I'm sure they don't look the same as they look to you from your perspective, okay? So when we go to Italy and talk about some things here, we will talk about them in a complete different way than what you would, right? I mean, some things that for us like, oh, that's odd, and you guys would be, oh, no, what they do is really odd, Things like that. So we were talking today, we have dinner at like 8, 9 o'clock at night. Here, restaurants close at 9 at time. We're like, what are they doing? We need to go out, Perspective. Perspective is important. So we need to understand this story, the perspective that it was written, so that we can understand what's really going on here. And I remember a friend of mine, she's a missionary. She told me, for example, that when she visited some Eastern countries, she saw that they had some maps of the world where their country was the center. For us, oh, they're the East, we're the West. And for them, oh, no, they're the East. We could be the East for someone else, right? And they could be, it's important. Perspective is important. So let's try to understand the perspective. Now, the story of Rahab was written from Israelites to Israelites. And she was not an Israelite. She was a Canaanite. So I think we need to try to get a little bit of this perspective, how the Israelites saw themselves and how they saw the Canaanites. So the Israelites, the people of Israel, they were the insiders. What do I mean by that? They were the people, and they viewed themselves as the one inside a covenant with the only true God. This relationship with God started with Abraham, but then when they got to Egypt, they became this big people and they were slaves. And at a certain point, God's like, you're ready. I'm going to take you out of Egypt. I'm going to make a covenant with you. I'm going to reveal to you who I am, how I want to be worshiped, how you should love each other. And I'm going to make you a people, and I'm going to bring you in a land, and you're going to live according to this covenant. So all the people around you will look at you and say, oh, that's really who God is. That's how we should live. Wow, that's how it should be. That was God's plan. Okay, he's like, this is what I'm going to do with these Israelites. They will be the insiders, and they will show the outsiders how to come in, how they can be, how I need to be worshiped. And so God does these miraculous things. He opens the sea. They come out of Egypt. I mean, Egypt was the superpower of the time, and they were just slaves. Things that, just amazing. And so they get out of there, and he keeps them alive for 40 years in the desert. I mean, I know they have these survival programs where people survive a certain thing, but a whole nation, a whole people, 40 years, it survives in the desert. I mean, I would challenge anyone to make a program on that. So anyhow, they do that, and they arrive near this land that God said, this is the land where you need to establish yourself so that from there I can show it, right, to everyone. I use my hands. I learned that here in Michigan, okay? So this will be my map. So down here we have, it's from your perspective, we have Egypt. And up here, let's say this is the Jordan River. So we have the west side and this is the east side, right? And this is the west side from your perspective. Perspective is important. So they do all this traveling. They arrive right here. And here there's a couple kings that try to stop them. And they defeat them. I mean, they're just slaves, a bunch of slaves that just came out from a country. And they're able to defeat two powerful kings on this side of the river. And they're ready to cross the river and come over on the other side. What an amazing people. They had no land, no structure. They weren't even supposed to become a big nation. What God wanted them to be was a community of loving people that worshiped the true God and would show everyone else what that meant. What did we have on the other side? We had the outsiders, the Canaanites. So remember my map here? So here's the Jordan. On this side lived the Canaanites, okay? This was Canaan. Now, they were the outsiders. Now, they were in no covenant with God. Actually, they had gone so far from even those basic moral principles that we have in our heart as human beings. They had come to the point where they would sacrifice their children to their God. Those are the practices that they had. And I mean, that's not only, you don't need a Bible to tell you that that's not right. I mean, as a human being, you feel it's terrible to think of someone who would kill their own child, to honor a God. And imagine for God to think that someone would do that, So God knew he wanted to stop that. He wanted to show that that's not the way. So the insider, the Israelites, were supposed to go there. And they were supposed to not make. God says, please be careful. You don't have to become like them. Don't do how they do. You have to be there and show them this new way that I have taught you. So be really careful. Don't do anything like they do it, because that's not what I appreciate. That's not what honors me. That's not love for me or for each other. So he warned them to be very careful to not adopt the same ways of the Canaanites. So now that we have the perspective, now that we have these two ways and what the plan of God was, now we need to go see more about who was Rahab. So we'll have in this story two spies that were from the Israelites, but we also have Rahab. So, okay, who is she? Where does she fit in this story? How is she, how would they look at her? First of all, she's a Canaanite, right? She's an outsider. She's an idol worshiper. She's one of those that approves that children be killed to worship a god. That's who Rahab was. I'm the insider, she's the outsider. She's the one who knows nothing about God. She's the one that we need to keep away. She's the one who is out there. Not only, Rahab is a prostitute. She lives an impure lifestyle. She has questionable moral standards. She sure doesn't live a life that even in the Canaanite society would be a life that you would desire. Prostitute couldn't have a family, it was a hard life, a hard style of life. But third, she was a woman. And you're like, well, what's the problem with that, Josie? No, I'm a woman, I understand. In our society, we would tend, but in that society, you have to really think, a woman had a very low influence on society. She even had no children. I mean, at the time, at least your children, your husband would kind of affirm your value. She didn't even have that. She had nothing. She was a woman that already had no status, a prostitute, and a Canaanite, an outsider. So this is the person, this is the Israelites are telling a story about Rahab, about a woman, about a prostitute, about a Canaanite. And that was the view that they had about these things. Now, how do we relate to her? Okay, how can her story be somehow, Josie, my story? What do I have to do with Rahab? So this is where I would like to go and look more in detail in her story and see if maybe Rahab's story versus our story can maybe be a story of difficult, toxic environments in which we can find ourselves. Let's start with the fact that she was a prostitute. Josie, what are you insinuating? Well, I'm just saying. Sometimes we say, prostitutes, did they choose that life? Or do they end up in that situation for circumstances in their life? We don't know Rahab's stories, okay? But I want to ask you this, and even in that society, would a little girl ever grow up dreaming to become a prostitute? I mean, maybe she didn't dream to be a doctor or an astronaut, okay? Not that at that time. But I'm sure, at least in her culture, I'm sure she desired a husband, children, a family, a life where she would be respected, where she could enjoy, some beautiful, beautiful things, beautiful moments. People would look at her with admiration. At that time, when you had a lot of children, wow, that was great. But that's where she grew. That was her desire. But for some reason, she ended up being a prostitute. Did she go with bad company? Did she, and make that decision? Did she have financial issues? And that was the only choice that she had to survive. We don't really know, but what we know, and what I think we could relate with, is that she was stuck in a situation that she did not really dream of or desire. It was definitely something that she had to choose at some point, or that she chose at some point, but was not the dream of her life. Secondly, she lived without the love of a spouse or the love of children. She didn't have that privilege. In this story, the father, the mother, the brother, the sister, and their families are mentioned, but not her family. And that was pretty common. If you were a prostitute, you didn't really think you could have a family. Could we relate to that? Could we maybe not have children that we had always desired? Could we maybe not have a husband or a wife that we always desired? Could we have maybe a relationship, but it's a toxic relationship in which really we are not receiving love? Could we be like Rahab and be missing that kind of relationship? Could we be involved in something that's toxic without a future? And we don't know how to get out of it or into something better. Third, it seems that Rahab needed to provide for her family. When she saves her life, she talks always about her mother, her father, her sister, her brothers. And this could mean that that's even a reason of her choice. Maybe she chose to be a prostitute because there were financial needs. Why couldn't her parents, provide, or her brother or sister provide for themselves? There was an attachment in this family. If she had made that choice out of rebellion, there probably wouldn't be this kind of relationship. So probably she had some kind of saying in providing and supporting, this family. And this is a big responsibility. Do you find yourself maybe overwhelmed by a big responsibility that maybe is pushing you in certain directions, in certain choices, because you feel that you're responsible for certain things? You're maybe overwhelmed by these responsibilities. Fourth, this is interesting, I think. She lived in a fortified city, right, with big walls. Apparently, Jericho, mighty city. But still, she was stuck in a situation prostitute, no family, overwhelmed by responsibilities. So this big, wonderful city wasn't really giving her the opportunities she could have wanted. You know, we live in a mighty country, right? As far as economics and power, America is considered, United States is one of the most powerful. But can we say that everyone in this country, has that kind of life? Or are some of us struggling, even here in this country, struggling to find opportunities for their life? And lastly, she had heard that these Israelites were coming and were going to destroy her city. She was doomed to destruction. She lived in a city, there was no way to get out of it, and it was going to be destroyed. I think sometimes if we're stuck in a situation like Rahab, we could feel that the Bible, the church, or whatever, has words of condemnation. We are doomed in front of that. Maybe we're stuck in some toxic relationship, in some toxic situation, toxic job, just difficult environment. We're doing things maybe that we're sure we're overwhelmed, and maybe we're in some kind of addiction because we just can't handle our life, and we feel like those insiders, that church people, that Bible talk, that's just condemning me. That's dooming me. I'm doomed. There's no way out. So maybe we can relate to Rahab a little bit. Maybe not today, maybe yesterday, maybe tomorrow in our life. But if we can relate to her at this point, I think we can go and look at her choice. And this is the part we need to see. If you were able to relate a little bit, now her choice will become very significant for you. So let's see. She's put in front of a choice because what happens? Well, two people arrive at her house, right? And they are spies. There are Israelite spies in her house. Well, where else could they go, right? I mean, in her house, men could go in and out, no problem. They couldn't just walk into any other house, right? But they're there. And the king knows about it. He sends guards and tells Rahab, give us the spies because they're there, with you. And there she is in front of a choice. This is a big choice for her. And Rahab has two options. So please think of Rahab's situation as your situation, in some aspect maybe of your life, and now think that you have two options. Think that God put you, maybe today, maybe even just these words, are your two guards that are knocking on the door and that are giving you two options. So let's look at them for a minute. So there's a safe and logical option, and there's a risky and illogical option. So the safe one is what? Well, I'm Rahab. I could turn in these spies. Maybe this way I'll at least save this city. The king could maybe even reward me. Maybe my financial burden will be a little bit lighter. Maybe this will always be my life, but still, they could never accuse me of betraying my own city. And, it could be the logical, maybe there's a way out of this destruction, this doom. They just want to destroy me. At least the city, they didn't give me this big option in my life. But, sometimes our toxic situations, guys, can seem better than any other option if we can feel a little bit more secure in them than other options. That's why sometimes we stay in them. When you guys had to decide to move, there was some risk there, right? Maybe it's better to stay where we are. Our money will still be the same. Our budget would be better. Let's not move to something different. That could be risky. So on the other hand, she had the other choice. I could hide them. I could save their life. I could make sure that they get back and they do come and destroy the city that is actually a prison for me. And I could hope that they'll spare my life. I could save my life and the ones that I'm responsible for, my parents, my brothers, my sisters. But I don't know anything about this God. Other than the fact that he's very powerful, I don't know if he loves foreigners or not. I don't know how they would treat me. And I'll tell you how usually they would treat. She would be a prisoner of war in this case. Many times women who were prisoner of war, they would be raped. I'm saying not in the Israelites. I mean, they shouldn't have never done that. But she didn't know that. Usually what happened, you're raped, and usually you're just enslaved. So you become a slave. So when you're a prisoner of war, that's kind of your destiny. You'll be a slave for someone, and that's. She didn't know that when God made his covenant with the Israelites, and this is so great of God, he gave them rules. They could never do something like that. They could never rape anyone. And if they wanted to make someone their wife, they had to make them their wife, and they had to respect them and give them the same rights that they would give to an Israelite that they would marry. But she didn't know all of that, okay? So she didn't know. So it was very risky. You know, and it's like when we're in a toxic situation, what do? Do we really risk? Now, Josie is there saying that maybe there's this God, that he's really all that powerful. He can really take me out of some certain situations. Is that really possible? Is that really possible? Do I take the risk? So what did Rahab do? I'll tell you her story, and then the rest will be your choice, okay? So Rahab chooses to protect the spies. She hides them. She helps them run away from her window. She does even more than that. She's a smart woman. She had to think this like that, just on the spot. And she tells the guards, oh, they just ran away. Now you better run because, they're going to shut the gates and then, you can't get to them anymore. And I'm sure that they went east towards their place and their people. And so she really directs them what to do. And then she goes to the spies and says, hey, I'll let you down. You go west. Stay there 3 days. And that she's like really making sure that they're not stupid too much to get caught, because she wants to be sure that her deal works, okay? A very smart woman, but she chooses the risk and the illogical choice. So let's go and see why. So if you're here thinking, you know what, I would like to be able right now to make the illogical, risky choice. It seemed like it worked for Rahab. I would like it to work for me, but how do you do that? How did she do that? What gave her the strength? What were the guidelines that led her and gave her the possibility to do that choice? And if you forget everything else, please remember these 3 guidelines. Because if you have them in your heart, whenever you find yourself in a position where you have to make a choice like Rahab's choice, you will have these guidelines to help you. The first one, Rahab, although an outsider, she recognized God's work in the world and the supremacy of his kingdom. Rahab, although an outsider, although in this toxic situation, although still a worshiper of idols, although still in her messed up, world where she was doing everything wrong for now, but there was one thing she was able to see in that situation. One thing became clear to her at a certain point. Let's read it. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. I know. This is, guys, if you read, please read the book of Joshua. It'll be amazing. But you'll notice something. She says, I know that your God gave you this country. But the Israelites, were they that sure? They're sending spies to kind of be sure that things will work out. I mean, we see in an outsider sometimes a greater faith in what God's going to do than in the insiders themselves. And she goes on, we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 kings, right, of the Amorites that were east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. We heard. Guys, you are hearing today. I am telling you, God is above any situation, any challenge you could find yourself to have to handle. She heard that. And when we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For, and this is the sentence, the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. Your Lord, your God, is God in heaven above and on the earth below. Your Lord, your God, is God in heaven above and on the earth below. What does that mean? He is God in heaven. He is the Lord. He is the King. He is sovereign. He is more powerful than anything I have to face here. But second, he is also the Lord down on earth. He is working something out. He has an agenda. He is moving things. He is creating this people. And she's like, I know that this God is up to something. I see it. I believe it. Was she already in? No. But from outside, at least she grasped that this was happening. And this made her have that desire to be part and to know more about it. But she doesn't stop there. And this is so important. She doesn't stop. Rahab, she adds works to her faith. We just saw in the video where she said she didn't keep it up here. She acted upon it, right? She knew that God was God above and below. And so she goes to the people, to the spies, and she says, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family because what? Just because she said that God was God above and below? Just because she thought that their God was so cool and powerful? No. She says, show kindness to me because I have shown kindness to you. Because I have acted upon that. I am risking my life. I am hiding you from the king. I am being kind. I did not betray you. I act upon what I believe. So now I'm asking you, give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father, mother, brother, sister, all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. I acted upon my faith. I acted. That's why I'm expecting now. I'm expecting something. I'm expecting my life back. And if we jump to the New Testament, James, he's Stefano's favorite book. He's a very practical guy. And in chapter 2, he talks about, hey guys, let's wake up. Faith is not something we can just talk about. Faith is something that we have to act upon, right? He says faith without works is what? Dead. And so James tries to give some examples, right? Just like we're doing today. He tries to inspire. And so he gives his first example, Abraham. Ooh, Abraham. Yes, he was willing to sacrifice his son, Abraham. Oh, our hearts just melt thinking, yes, I want to be like Abraham. And then he goes ahead and he says, in the same way, just like Abraham, he's putting Abraham and this other example the same place. Was not even Rahab the prostitute? Wait. Abraham, I like that. Now, Rahab the prostitute, considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction? Not when she said, God, Lord is God, up in heaven and below. No. She was considered righteous for what she did. And she is an example. She's brought as an example to you and me. Let's act upon our faith just like Rahab the prostitute, the outsider, did. In the midst of that messed up situation in which she was, she did. And last but not least, I hope we all follow Rahab in this example. Given the opportunity, Rahab goes all the way in. I like because even Pastor Bill mentioned that about Nicodemus, right? These people, when they make a choice, they go all the way in. So let's read. So what happens? Okay, so Rahab, she had faith, she acted upon her faith, and her life is spared. What after, right? She's not committed to this God. She just said that she believes he's powerful, and she acted upon it, and she received a blessing. Her life is spared. Let's see what happens. So they're getting ready. They're going to conquer Jericho. So Joshua said to the two men who had spied out the land, go into the prostitute's house, bring her out, and all who belong to her in accordance with your oath to her. So the young men who had done the spying went in and brought out Rahab, her father and mother and brother and sister, and all who belonged to her. They brought her out, her entire family, and they put them in a place outside the camp of Israel. They saved their life, but they put them in a place outside the camp of Israel. Now, obviously, they were trying to be careful, right? God had told them, don't mix with them, meaning don't do the same things that they do. And the Israelites are trying maybe to obey in the way that they understood that God meant. So they put them outside of the camp. And we know nothing more about them. The Bible doesn't really say what happens. What do? Do they live outside of the camp for the whole life? Do they have to find someplace else? Or, what happens to Rahab and her family? So we discover it in the first chapter of the New Testament, when Jesus comes and he finally reveals to us what he meant, right, with insiders and outsiders, and how the outsiders should be viewed and treated, and what plan he has for me and you when we are still outsiders. So, first chapter of Matthew is a boring chapter. There's a genealogy. Who cares about genealogy? You just skip that one. We don't want to know the father of the father of the father of the father and whatever. But there's something so beautiful in this genealogy. So this is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, not of any, dude, he's the Messiah. I mean, he's the one. He's the king. For the Israelites, he is the one. So and it says, so this is the genealogy of Jesus, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Oh, Abraham, yes. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Oh, yes. And Isaac was the father of Jacob. Oh, big, yes. Jacob was the father of Judah and his brother. Oh, yes. Do you notice that only the fathers are mentioned? No mothers, right? The father, the father, the father. Okay, I guess the mother's not really important. And the thing is that it tremended from father to father. Okay, but then something becomes a little bit tricky in verse 3. Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. We have a mother here. Hey, one mother is mentioned. Tamar, I would love to tell you her story. I would love to. But I just want to tell you a couple things. She was an outsider. And her sexual activities could have been considered questionable. I'll just tell you that she did pretend to be a prostitute. So her father-in-law, well, who wasn't her father-in-law at that moment, but anyhow, got her pregnant. And then by that, and you hear it like that, you're like, Josie, what are you saying? I mean, are we doing the Bible here, not some kind of, trash story that we have to hear about? No. The point is, Tamar was an outsider who was mistreated, but somehow, even if she used ways that were not conventional, she was kind of forced to do that, to get some rights. And God decides to use her children for Jesus' genealogy? I mean, Judah had other children. Can he use someone else? Not only he uses their children, he mentions her in the genealogy. And why doesn't he mention Rachel? Rachel, we like her. Sarah. Oh, yeah, Sarah. No, he mentions Tamar. I don't get it. But goes around, father, father, father. And then he comes to Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab? Rahab the prostitute? So I don't know what happened, but somehow Rahab got in. She went all the way in. I'm sure if she was still a prostitute, she wouldn't have gotten married. So if she got married, it means that she changed her style of life. Somebody was good to her, accepted to marry her, but she worshiped the God of Israel. She came all the way in. She quit her lifestyle. She certainly didn't sacrifice her children to any idols. She came all the way in. And you know what? She was an outsider, a prostitute, and still God put her in the genealogy of Jesus. And you'll say, okay, maybe that just happened. But look at the other woman mentioned. Boaz, the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Even here, I would like to tell you the story, but just know Ruth was an outsider. She was a Moabite. And her story has some funny things going on, but still, she was in hard situations. She did what she had to do to get and to provide for her mother-in-law. And sometimes things we have to do are not pretty. Sometimes things we have to do are not nice. But God is saying, come to me. I can change that. Maybe you accepted a job where they're making you do things that are not good. But you feel that if you leave that job, how will you sustain your family? But God is saying, you're an outsider in that job. You are not in my covenant. You are working that job, but you know you are doing things that are not good. So sometimes it's not being an outsider like not believing to God. It's being in the covenant, but being an outsider in certain areas in our life. Maybe we have an affair, and we're an outsider in our relationship with our wife or our husband because we're not faithful. We are outsiders. And maybe we were weak. Maybe there were circumstances. Maybe we were going through a hard time. Well, God is saying, you can come in. You just need to make the right choices. And you can be all the way in. He still has great plans for each one of us. And the only other thing I want to notice of this, while we go on, Obed was the father of Jesse, Jesse the father of King David, David. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. Another outsider, because Uriah wasn't Israelite, so probably she wasn't either. And even there, questionable, this son was a son of adultery. Even if she didn't want it, she was forced into it. And these are the only women mentioned together with, the last one, Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, and Mary was the mother of Jesus, who is called the Messiah. Mary, they associated, the only women in this genealogy are Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Uriah, outsiders with questionable happenings in their lives. And then Mary, well, you know what? Mary was seen as an adulteress, right? Wasn't she? She was pregnant before she got married. Now, we know that she didn't do anything, but in some way she was forced in a situation where she was seen by others as someone who did something, wrong, who was not worthy. God doesn't look at that. See, that's the point. God is just a God of redemption who wants to bring the outsiders in. We just need to make the right choices in any area of our life in which that is needed. So I'll come to an end. And this is my challenge for each one of us. I think that right now we could ask God in prayer, or maybe you need to take some of that solitude, silent moment, right? And ask God in prayer to help you look with honesty to your life. Is there any aspect of it in which you are living as an outsider to God's covenant? Maybe you don't even believe in him, or maybe you don't even, you never even thought about following him. Or maybe you are following Jesus, but in some areas, maybe in the way you're thinking, maybe your priorities, maybe your relationship, maybe there's an addiction in your life. Could be a food addiction, a drug addiction, a porn, addiction. Porn. It could be anything. Maybe there's something there that you're living as an outsider to the covenant. We need God to help us see that. Rahab heard about this mighty God, and that opened her eyes. So this is the second thing. You need to ask God to reveal the deliverance power that he has on behalf of all the insiders. God has a deliverance power there for you. If you come in, if you choose to come in, submit to his way, he has a deliverance power there for you. Just how he delivered the Israelites, he delivered Rahab, he'll deliver you. He's a faithful God. But you need to see that. You need to see his power. You need to see and believe. He is the Lord God above in heaven and below on earth. In my personal situation, he is God. Third, take a first step. Don't just believe it. Don't just think it. Take a first step in the direction of aligning your life to his kingdom. What is that step? I don't know. You know it. Are you in a job that's not doing good things? Well, maybe you need to leave that job and trust God. Are you in a toxic relationship? Maybe you need to step out of that. Are you in some kind of addiction? Maybe you need to start one step towards taking control over that. I don't know what it is. You know. But the point is, don't only believe that God can deliver you. Make one little first step. Just one. Rahab just hid the spies and, let them go. She wasn't all in at that point. She got all in with years and work and time. But she did get there. Everything started from one faithful step when she recognized that God was who he was. And the last is just maybe an advice. I would advise you to share that decision with someone you trust. Hopefully, the insiders will have learned that God's greatest joy is to see the outsiders come in. When you share it with someone, the reaction should not be, oh, you're in that situation? You made that? I don't know. The reaction you should find, and I'm talking to the insiders maybe for that particular situation, is, wow, I'd love to be here with you, help you through this. I understand you. I probably would have ended up in the same situation. I see what you did. It's fine. We can go through this together. So please, insiders, don't leave the outsiders out of the camp. Remember, God brought Rahab into the Messiah's genealogy. And that's what he wants to do with each one of us. Any area in which we are outsiders and we want to come all in, we should have people around us to help us see the mighty power of God, help us make that first step, and help us come all the way in. Let's pray. Lord, we are so thankful for the greatness of your power. We are thankful because you are Lord up in heaven and Lord here below. Nothing happens here that's out of your control. And any place that we could find ourselves today, Lord, is a place where you can help us come all the way in. We all have areas in which we need to do that. Learn maybe to trust more, learn to get out bad habits, or just learn to set our priorities. Or, Lord, we just ask your mercy upon us. We ask you to give us good fellow disciples, Lord, that know that they are flawed as much as we are, but that will be there with us, that will help us walk this walk with you. Thank you for Rahab. Thank you for her story. We thank you, Lord. We just pray your grace and your strength in our lives. Amen.
Thing is going to go here, so I'll just talk really loud, and we'll sing really loud. So many things in that message that I just, how do I pick one to land on to remind? One of the last things that Joseph said. Okay, we'll not do that. It made me think of there, but for the grace of God, go. And how can we ever look at someone as being an outsider when at one point in time we were the outsiders? So, as you're going about your day, as you're going about your week, as you're going about your life, keep that in mind. But there's like 20,000 other things in the message that you could also keep in mind, but that's just the thing that I kind of landed on. So, thank you, Josie. Would you please stand with us as we close our service today? Because the Lord our God, just as he saved Rahab from her situation, he is mighty to save us in our situation also.
All my fears and failures. of salvation. He rose and conquered the grave. Jesus conquered the grave. Savior, He can move the mountains. My God is mighty to save. He is mighty to save. Forever, author of salvation. He rose and conquered the grave. Jesus conquered the grave.
Amen. Go this week, find an outsider, help them see the way in. And for those of you who are maybe visiting today or maybe online, if you want to come to our family reunion on August 15th, just let us know and we will make sure that you get there. And just have a great day. God loves you and so do I.